Sam Wilson, Army veteran, grief and trauma therapist, an Avenger, Defender of the Universe, the Falcon, Captain America. Sam is one of the few characters in the MCU we've seen not only grow in universe, but grow so much that he takes over the title of another superhero member. As such, you would expect not only more consistent writing due to the amount of time spent developing him, but also a level of competency in justifying why he was worthy of taking over this mantle in the first place. Sam Wilson is not an example of this, instead somehow regressing in progress and character, with the poor projects of phases 4 and 5 failing to help do anything that isn't surface level and superficial. Let's explore the rise and character assassination of Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson is first introduced to us in The Winter Soldier, running into Steve during their morning workout routines. His characterization here is solid and well defined, being an individual who, while snarky and quick-witted, is a genuine nice person who offers to help Steve not only discover some music that might be worth checking out after coming to the 21st century, but also relates to him on a personal level, bonding with Steve over their difficulties coming back from war and casually offering him a place in the next therapy group session. And despite the physical prowess of Steve and how significantly he struggles to try and keep up with him, Sam still tries to keep running and even compete with Steve, despite having no chances of beating him, showing his determination against much greater odds. We next see him at the therapy session, helping those in the group come to terms with their trauma and encouraging them to get out into the world and live their lives as best as they can, while at the same time being very open and honest, telling Steve about his own struggles over losing his friend and encouraging him to do what makes him happy, even if it means leaving the military. When Steve and Natasha later show up, heavily injured and wanted by the authorities, Sam shows no hesitation in helping them, giving them a place to rest and eat up, and despite Steve insisting he shouldn't due to how much he has to lose and the fact that he left the fighting for a reason, he still chooses to help them, showing his military background with his skills earning high praise from Natasha herself, once again reinforcing his character and his capabilities as a soldier. Assisting Steve and Nat to find Sitwell to get information, we see him in action for the first time against Hydra forces, showing himself to not only be a good shot, but also tactical, laying low and maneuvering around the enemy until the opportunity to strike presents itself. Later during the final battle, he is shown to be extremely deadly and efficient with his wingsuit, outperforming the helicarriers and even a Quinjet without too much difficulty, only being taken out of the fight from a surprise attack by the Winter Soldier, and even after this he immediately goes to provide assistance to Nat and Fury, putting up a strong fight against Rumlow before evacuating from the crumbling facility. Sam then takes time out of his life to wait by Steve's bed until he wakes up and later agrees to help find Bucky, showing a deep amount of sympathy and understanding to the situation. He would continue to support Cap in his hunt for Bucky and would eventually join the Avengers to try and make the world a better place. After a mission in Lagos ends with several innocents killed in the crossfire, the countries of the world give the Avengers the Sokovia Accords to sign, which would make them agree they can no longer act without permission. Sam was the first person to vocally dismiss the Accords, believing the same stance that Steve would later take, that signing the Accords would restrict them too much and stop them from responding to threatening situations in the proper time, risking people's lives just because they would need permission to save them from the government bodies that might have other agendas, showing a desire to save lives being the most important thing to him as an Avenger. After Steve approaches Sam to ask for help in finding Bucky and proving that he isn't responsible for the bombings that occurred, Sam once again jumps in to help, assisting Steve in safely capturing Bucky, and later, when Bucky's Winter Soldier programming is initiated by Zemo and everyone focuses on him, Sam attempts to go after Zemo to prove Bucky's innocence and stop future bloodshed. Despite some hesitation and contempt towards him, Sam still works alongside Bucky when informed that there's several other Winter Soldiers that could cause mass chaos in the world, believing that those allied with the Sokovia Accords won't help them. Later, when attempting to ensure Steve and Bucky get away to stop Zemo, Rhodey is injured, and realizing that the two no longer need his support anymore, Sam chooses to go to Rhodey to see if he can help, even though he knew how emotional Tony would be and that he would most likely be imprisoned, once again showing his extreme care and empathy that he would allow himself to be captured just to apologize to someone he unintentionally got hurt. When Stark visits him in prison, once again despite his contempt for him, Sam chooses to assist Tony when Tony shows evidence of Zemo's involvement and willingness to help Steve stop him, once again showing that Sam can put personal feelings aside when innocent people's lives are on the line. Over the next few years of his life, Sam would work alongside Cap as fugitives to help the world in secret, and would later be a key asset in the fight against Thanos, helping to save Vision, fighting Wakanda, and later, after being brought back by the Avengers time heist, immediately dove back into the fight at the Avengers compound. After Cap decided to stay back in time and live his life before coming back to the present, Sam is offered the shield and the title of Captain America. And after some hesitation, he promises Steve to live up to his legacy. And despite the strangeness of it all and the variety of emotions he must have been feeling at this point, he tries to keep the topic as positive as he can. So what do we know about Sam Wilson, the soon-to-be Captain America? Well, on a superhero level, he is equipped with a jetpack flight system that allows him to easily traverse the open areas as well as dodge much more armoured targets like the anti-aircraft guns and even Quinjets, skillfully taking down long-range targets with precision marksmanship while also being able to get up close and personal for hand-to-hand combat, showing a good combination of strength and athleticism. On a personal level, Sam is shown above else to be a very empathetic person, becoming a trauma counsellor to help those who have experienced extreme grief and guilt, constantly putting his own life on the line for the sake of doing the right thing. And despite having heated moments and contempt at times, he is willing to put aside those things for the sake of doing what's right, as best demonstrated by the fact he talked to Tony despite not liking him, especially after the fight they just had a day ago, just to make sure that Steve would have some backup when taking down Zemo and the Winter Soldiers. It would seem that Sam was a very good candidate to hand down the title of Captain America to, especially as Bucky was still trying to cope with his time as the Winter Soldier and hadn't really had any heroic moments to show us why he deserved to be Captain America. And to be honest, I was looking forward to seeing how they would handle him in his own solo movie. Unfortunately, they didn't do this. Instead, they made Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a show that, like many of the MCU shows released for Disney Plus during phases 4 and 5, was poorly written, poorly paced, and most importantly, proceeded to character assassinate their main characters while introducing an antagonistic character we were supposed to hate but came across as more justifiable character to root for, and a villain that just sort of feels like they're there for the sake of being there without them making a solid character. And as such, Sam Wilson quickly became a character I enjoyed seeing on screen, to more of a character I loathed whenever he appeared. When we first see him in this series, it becomes apparent immediately that some of his brain cells die during the battle against Thanos, as despite the fact that he has X-ray vision that can see into the plane he's pursuing, he decides to physically smash on top of the plane and then look through the cockpit window, both actions that would have alerted the terrorists to his presence. Despite an initial show of skill fighting the terrorists on the plane, he then chooses to take his time and slowly walk around the person he's supposed to extract, despite this being a very time-sensitive mission, allowing Batroc to quickly sneak up on him and engage him in hand-to-hand combat, which almost causes him to fail the mission parameters and start an international incident. During a speech about the legacy of Steve Rogers, although he had told Steve he would try and make him proud, he ultimately decides to give up the shield and refuses to be Captain America. And despite pointing out that the title of Captain America had started out as a government asset and was only really raised up as an independent hero thanks to the actions of Steve Rogers, Sam decides to give the shield back to said government, and is then completely surprised when they decide to use their property to bring in a new Captain America, despite this being the obvious endpoint to doing this. In later episodes, he would try and justify this by saying that he wasn't ready for the pressure of being Captain America, which, while a completely valid concern, doesn't explain why he didn't just keep it until he was, or hand it to a trusted individual for when he wanted it back, such as Rhodey. No, instead he decided to hand it back to the government the first chance he gets, only to act like a 5-year-old when someone else is then given the shield to represent Captain America, something that he personally allowed and consented to by giving it away. Later, when he visits his sister, Sarah, he discovers that she is in debt and might lose the house and the boat due to her fishing business struggling, but despite her saying that she wants to talk to him about it, he brushes her off to talk to some old friends. It's only later, when everyone leaves, that he bothers to talk to her properly, attempting to secure a loan for her. Sam can't pay off her debts because apparently Tony didn't bother to pay him or look after his family for several years when he was an Avenger when he got snapped. But that's a different flaw with the writing that isn't the fault of how Sam is characterized. What is his fault is how he reacts to the bank and their decision to not give his sister a loan, acting like they're being unreasonable when she is already swimming in debt to stay afloat and pay them the money she already owes, while he has no savings and only recently started working for the government again. Outside, Sam is annoyed that the bank refused to give them a loan and refuses to listen to his sister, instead talking down to her and telling her that she's done a bad job. This is said even though he apparently hasn't been back home for several years before the snap, going off to join the military while leaving his sister to struggle by herself to look after the house and the family business after their parents died. And despite doing all of this, the only thing he cares about is the fact he might lose the property which is also his, completely dismissing the hard work and care that Sarah put into them while he was away. It also never dawns on him to use his status as a hero of the world to try and help his sister, where he could easily appeal to people to help donate to his sister, do some sort of podcast, live stream or interviews to earn money, or even ask the government for a small sum that he could pay back through doing government contracts. Instead, he insists on trying to get it through the bank so his sister's name is on the loan, meaning that should something go wrong, she will face the consequences of it, once again trying to make her take full responsibility for something he wants equal access to while he goes off to fight crime. After John Walker is revealed to be the new Captain America, Bucky grills him on why he did what he did and what did he expect to happen. Sam apparently had no idea that they would bring someone in as the new Captain America. Despite the fact that the government technically always had control of the title and the shield, he endorsed them by publicly giving it back, and then he was even told by Rhodey what would happen. But no, he insists that this was completely unforeseeable, telling Bucky to back off and then completely brushing off all responsibility off of himself. After being deployed on a mission to learn about the Flag Smashers, Bucky comes along with him to help, and even though he is a super soldier with advanced combat experience, Sam refuses to cooperate with him in any way, even though the lives of innocent people are on the line, leaving him behind and forcing him to jump out of a plane which could have caused him extreme harm. When attempting to do reconnaissance, Sam doesn't even bother to explain what his plan is or try and compromise with him in any way, leading to the two arguing with each other instead of figuring out the best way to stop the Flag Smashers, giving them enough time to begin transporting the resources they were loading up on. After some questionable decisions made by Bucky, the two begin fighting the Flag Smashers on top of the trucks, and even though these people are powerful enough to fight Bucky and leap from the truck with ease, Sam refuses to use his aerial abilities to his advantage, sending Red Wing in to be smashed and then refusing to use his guns, allowing himself to get restrained and almost killed until John and Lamar show up. Although the two greatly turn the tide of the fight, Sam still manages to mess things up by throwing one of the Flag Smashers into Bucky instead of literally any other direction, forcing Bucky to fall down and be stuck underneath the truck, meaning that Sam now has to spend his time rescuing Bucky instead of assisting John and Lamar, who are obviously no match against 4 super soldier empowered individuals. Sam even snidely retorts that Bucky is welcome for the rescue, a rescue Bucky wouldn't have needed if Sam never bothered to put him in that position to begin with. Even though Sam just messed up their first chance at stopping the Flag Smashers and then left them to fend for themselves, John and Lamar show no animosity or bad will between the two, offering them a ride so they can reach the airbase quicker and make sure the Flag Smashers don't get away from them. And even though Sam knows the dangers of super soldiers, he initially refuses to go with them out of spite, having to be persuaded into getting into the Jeep by Walker. In the Jeep, Sam is annoyed and frustrated that the government tracked his equipment, which is what allowed John and Lamar to find him. Last time I checked, Sam didn't create this equipment, so it must have been given to him in the first place. So I don't understand why he's so entitled to think the government would just give him millions of dollars worth of equipment and not keep track of what it's being used for. Bucky and Sam then get so annoyed that Lamar has a code name that they then stop the truck and start to walk to the airfield that's miles away, delaying them and putting lives in jeopardy for the horrendous crime of Lamar doing what literally every other hero in the MCU does. John then bluntly tells them that he isn't trying to replace Steve and he isn't trying to make himself the superior version of Captain America. He is just trying to do a job and it would help everyone if Bucky and Sam helped him. This somehow pisses Sam off even more and then they leave, walking all the way back to the airstrip. On the plane back to the States, Sam actually says some things that aren't completely moronic, telling Bucky that they can't just take the shield back even if they're doing it in honor of Steve. After arriving in the US and discovering that there's another super soldier called Isaiah that literally no one in US history knew about because the writer's ability to relate race to Captain America was about as subtle as well planned as a concrete block to the head, Sam and Bucky begin to argue in the middle of the road. Now, a police car then proceeds to come around the corner, and after seeing two adults arguing in the middle of the road, decides to check out the public disturbance, because that's what this is. They're arguing and blocking the road, they're disturbing the street, and so naturally they start to question if everything's alright. All the while, Sam talks to them in a raised voice and doesn't comply with their request for ID, with the scene framing this as the police harassing Sam and only giving up once they realise he's the Falcon. But no, that's not the case at all. They're not aggressive with him and they never raise their voice. They merely ask some simple questions while Sam does nothing to calm down, and once they realise that Sam is a superhero, they leave him alone. There's no racism allegory here, Sam's just being high and mighty to avoid following simple requests. After Bucky is sent to jail, Sam is then annoyed when he discovers that John paid Bucky's bail and removed the limitations of having court-appointed therapy sessions. In a therapy session with Bucky, Bucky rightfully asks him why he just gave it away, with Sam replying that he thought he was doing the right thing by giving away the shield. This is fine, but as I said earlier, I genuinely cannot understand why he thought the government were just going to keep the shield in a display case. It's baffling that even with Rhodey telling him exactly what will happen, he's still taken by surprise when they gave it to someone else. Sam proceeds to then say that after everything is done, he and Bucky can go their separate ways, and they then talk to John and Lamar outside. John asks that they combine their strengths together and take down the Flag Smashers, and Sam agrees that that would be the best thing to do. Despite just saying this, he then says he's not going to do that, and that he and Bucky will work as freelance agents instead. This justification makes no sense whatsoever. They aren't Avengers anymore. That isn't a thing again yet. And while you could argue that different countries might let them do their own thing because they're recognised as heroes, John and Lamar are not just working as agents of the US government, but also as agents of the Global Reparations Council, which has senators from pretty much every country helping to coordinate relief efforts after the blip. The Flag Smashers are targeting the GRC's resources, and so the council are using John to take them down. Essentially, John is working with free access to every country in the council and their resources, while Sam and Bucky have nothing. And yet Sam insists that John has less to work with than them just by being themselves, and so bluntly dismisses Walker once again. After refusing to accept help from two other highly skilled individuals, and literally all the resources from every country on the planet, Sam and Bucky's next brilliant solution is to team up with a terrorist that killed nearly 100 people and destroyed the Avengers. Despite having another moment of not being a moron, where he points out how bad of a person Zemo is and the consequences of taking him out of prison, when he does meet Zemo, he just instantly goes along with it. Zemo's plan is to go to Madripoor, with Bucky pretending to be the Winter Soldier and Sam as a gangster in order to conduct business and find the man who made the Super Soldier Serum for the Flag Smashers. Sam doesn't bother to do anything to cover his face or head, despite the fact that he's a well-known famous superhero who could easily be recognised. Sam does eventually blow their cover, but not because he didn't bother to try and hide his identity, but by the fact that he didn't bother to turn off his phone and attracted unwanted attention, with the group now being hunted by an entire city of bounty hunters. After being saved by Sharon Carter, Sam promises to help get her name cleared so she can return to the US if she agrees to help find the man who made the Super Soldier Serum. She gets some information and takes the group to where the scientist's lab is located, and they learn what they need in regards to the serum and how the Flag Smashers got a hold of it. After giving them all the information he has, Zemo shoots the scientist, something that shocks Sam and forces him to try and restrain Zemo. Why? Sam knew full well what Zemo's goals and motivations were. He wants everyone with the Super Soldier Serum and the means to create it dead. I don't understand why Sam is so shocked that Zemo killed this guy who can make fresh batches when he literally told him that that's what he wants to do. After fighting their way out of the shipping yard and back to Zemo's plane, Sam talks about how Sharon became a fugitive and Isaiah was experimented on, and somehow comes to the conclusion that the best thing to do with the shield would have been to destroy it, because people only seem to want to use it as a symbol to oppress people. I mean, that's certainly an interesting take for something that's shown to be freedom from the Nazis, defending the innocence of Earth from galactic threats, and helping to save half the universe. In Latvia, Sam is informed that the Flag Smashers raided and bombed a GRC warehouse, killing and injuring several people and stealing supplies that those in the refugee camps rely on to survive. Despite attacking and killing several people and stealing their resources, having a Super Soldier Serum that warps their mind, and even admitting that she has probably reached a stage with her actions where she has become radicalized and can't listen to reason, Sam thinks that this is okay because she's just a kid. Personally, I think that if someone deliberately goes out of their way to blow up buildings and kill people, they should probably be held responsible for it. But according to Sam, it's fine to do this as long as you think it's okay and you're under the age of 20. After investigating a refugee camp and speaking to some of the other people there, Sam comes to the logical conclusion that being able to go anywhere and do whatever you want with no checks whatsoever, which is what happened during the blip, is a totally valid approach to creating a structured, functioning society. Because an anarchistic world where there's no governments to hold people accountable for their actions or keep track of potential threats sounds like paradise, doesn't it? He also insists that he can reach Carly and stop her because she isn't motivated by what most other villains they fought against have been motivated by. My guy, do you understand who you're in the room with? Both Zemo and Carly had loved ones taken from them by groups they believed had their best interests at heart, but recklessly got other people killed. The only difference is that Zemo actually had a valid reason for feeling the way he feels, but Sam shits on him throughout the show while at the same time putting a more shallow and unjustifiable version of him on a pedestal. He just becomes a massive hypocrite from the 4th episode onwards with zero self-awareness. Sam phones Sharon for help getting information on the funeral of Carly's adopted mother. And then he is taken by surprise when he runs into John and Lamar, with Sam and Bucky still not figuring out that running around with their world famous faces out in the open was bound to draw attention to them, especially when they're walking around with a well-known terrorist. Sam somehow comes to the conclusion that now, when she is grieving her mother figure and therefore her emotions are all over the place, is the best time to try and talk sense to her, even bringing up his time as a grief counsellor from the Winter Soldier. Because as we all know, the best time to talk to someone is when they're angry, upset and aren't thinking rationally. Everyone allows Sam to go in and talk to Carly, completely giving away the element of surprise they had, and he also fails to talk her down in the 10 minutes he gave Walker, resulting in a conflict erupting when John comes to arrest her, with the only reason they are able to stop Carly smuggling the super soldier serum out is thanks to Zemo. When John comes to arrest Zemo, the wanted terrorist, Sam refuses to hand him over, instead saying that everyone needs to work together in order to stop Carly. You know that thing that Walker was trying to do the entire series, including in this current episode, until Sam decided that what he wanted to do was more important than what literally every country in the world wanted. After the Dora Milaje waste everyone's time by trying to kill everyone in the room instead of just taking Zemo, Sam is contacted by his sister Sarah, who was just threatened by Carly and forced to pass a message on, with Sam saying he would do anything to stop Sarah getting hurt. Everything except stop the mass murdering lunatic and her army when he has the chance. Or the second time in a few minutes from this phone call when he and Bucky meet Carly alone, and then decide to run away to stop John for some reason instead of taking her down. After fighting the group, Carly kills Lamar, causing a grief-stricken and rage-filled Walker to keep fighting one of Carly's soldiers until he kills him in full view of the public. After John runs away, Sam and Bucky try and find him. And you remember that grief counselor bullshit? It seems like Sam is actually trying to help John, until he stops trying to comfort Walker and then abruptly tells him he has to hand over the shield, with him and Bucky immediately trying to beat the shit out of a grief-stricken, emotionally unstable man when he doesn't immediately comply with them. After heroically beating the shit out of a traumatized soldier who just lost his best friend, the two leave him broken and bleeding on the warehouse floor and go back to regroup. Sam, who was never authorized to do any of this by any government, is then annoyed when he's told he has to step down because he and Walker have caused the situation to get even more fucked, and the government want to know what the fuck he was doing, because he clearly wasn't stopping the bad guy. Him refusing to stop the bad guy also allows Carly to go even more underground, meaning Sam has now made it even harder to stop buildings full of innocent people from being blown up. Sam doesn't care about any of this and is just annoyed that he isn't given permission to do whatever he wants anymore. He goes to see Isaiah, and after a scene about race and black representation, which is about as subtle as a school bus smashing through your living room wall and as deep as a child's paddling pool, Sam decides to not deal with the super soldier terrorists that he allowed to get away, because apparently he was fine doing stuff without government permission and annoying government officials for the first half of the show, but doing his own thing now and annoying the government is just too out of character for him, and instead he comes back home to boss his sister around on things that she has a much better knowledge of and how to do. After fiddling around with the family boat with Bucky and fucking things up for Sarah, Sam decides to talk about the shield while displaying proficiency with throwing it, while also, for the first time in the show, giving some good advice on grief that is actually useful and reasonable. He decides that he is going to keep fighting and will be Captain America, And we then get a training montage of him not being able to use the shield like he just did a few minutes ago. He quickly suits up as the new Captain America and doesn't seem to be bothered trying to warn anyone about the possible terrorist attack that is about to happen at the GRC meeting. After the building comes under attack because no one decided to warn them about it, Sam and Bucky arrive to help, and he ends up getting into a fight with Batroc, a very terrible one that has a very funny scene that I'm going to use as an analogy later. After pursuing a helicopter full of captured GRC senators, Sam actually manages to be quite competent at first, even helping to save a couple of helicopter pilots that get caught up in the crossfire. That is until he decides to just keep randomly flying next to the helicopter and doing nothing, allowing the Flag Smasher pilot to keep plowing into him until he smashes into a ship and gets bombarded with loads of concrete cylinders. Sam manages to get the helicopter under control of the hostages and then goes off to look for Karli, who took another group hostage and is fighting Bucky and Walker, and he arrives just in time to save the hostages. When Karli and the others flee while using smoke to cover themselves, despite having X-ray and thermal vision that can be used to immediately keep track of them, Sam decides to just stand there and watch them run away, only going after them once they flee into the construction area. Once he finds Karli, he sees her standing over Sharon, having just shot her and going to shoot her again. And after all of this, Sam tries to act like she's just a kid who doesn't know what she's doing. This girl launched terrorist attacks across all of Europe, attacked New York, and just tried to slowly roast a bunch of civilians alive, by the way. But according to Sam, that's because she's just a bit confused. After tackling her, Sam keeps saying that he doesn't want to fight her, trying to reason with her and refusing to attack, only defending himself instead of just ending the fight, and literally just stands there and watches as she picks up a gun and begins to shoot him. And if Sharon wasn't there to kill her, Sam would be fucking dead, all because he thought that the psycho teen terrorist was some misunderstood cutie. After cradling her body like she's some sort of heroic figure, Sam talks to the senators, asking them to stop calling the person who performed numerous terrorist attacks all over Europe and in the US a terrorist. Sam tries to lecture them about what they're doing, only to immediately agree when one of them points out how complicated this situation is and that the senators are doing the best with what they can. During his speech, Sam then says that the senators can't be doing the best that they can, because apparently putting on a Captain America costume is just as tenuous and straining as figuring out how to clothe and house hundreds of millions of people. And Sam managed to go through the terrible ordeal of putting on a costume, so they should be able to magically make resources and houses appear from the sky. He tells them that they need to do better, even though before he said he agreed that the situation is complicated and that they're doing the best they can, so I'm not sure how they can do better when he agrees they're already doing the best, but what can I say, he's an idiot. He tops off his speech that Karli must have had a point because people chose to follow her and define the government. Because there's no other reason why people would choose to follow someone who was willing to give them superpowers and the ability to kill and steal whoever they want. You know, it's not like there's things such as, just a couple of words to throw out there, looters, psychopaths, sociopaths, opportunists, mercenaries. None of them could exist in her group, you know. There's no possible way anyone in her group could be any of them. After he finishes lecturing them and flies off, we next see him closing out the series with some decent scenes, making sure Isaiah is acknowledged for his service and what was done to him, and relaxing and partying with his family and Bucky. In Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Sam Wilson is not the same as the Sam Wilson in the rest of his MCU appearances. While an extremely empathetic person even to those he dislikes, Sam somehow manages to carry this trait for Karli, but refuses to offer it to Walker even when he's suffering a psychotic breakdown after losing his best friend. And despite basically having these same motivations for revenge, he refuses to give this same treatment to Zemo. Speaking of Walker, when Tony, a guy Sam doesn't really like, just beat the shit out of each other, and the person responsible for Sam possibly spending his life in prison, when he comes to Sam and tells him he wants to help Steve and stop Zemo, Sam instantly puts aside his own personal feelings for the sake of stopping a man who has killed dozens of innocent people and might be trying to kill even more. Here, Walker comes to him to ask him for help in stopping a terrorist group from going around the world killing people, and he instantly tells him to fuck off and stubbornly refuses to do anything that would end this threat. In fact, he would rather work with limited resources alongside a wanted criminal and terrorist instead of having access to the resources and manpower of entire governments just because he didn't want to work with Walker. In every prior appearance, he was willing to put his life on the line if it meant doing the right thing. not only physically but also in a legal sense, willing to defy the government multiple times to do what he thinks is right and save lives even if he has to go on the run for several years. But when told that the government want him to stop going after the Flag Smashers, a group of psycho super soldiers blowing up buildings full of people, he just agrees and fucks off to go fix a boat and party. He has become such a massive hypocrite and struggles to stand on any principles, blaming everyone else for the problems around him but never accepts any responsibility for his part in them. He lectures others on their problems when he has no idea what they've gone through or tried to do for themselves. He comes to the conclusion that because some stupid people are racist, that means he somehow understands the responsibility of juggling millions of people's lives and trying to organise an entire planet's worth of refugee camps, all the while lecturing people on problems he offers no better solutions to. He also simultaneously is extremely competent in some scenes, expertly using the shield and his wingsuit for maximum effectiveness, to bumbling around like a moron for no reason, such as when he decides to peek through a plane's windows to see inside when he has X-ray vision, or, well, this scene. And this scene is the perfect representation of the character of Sam Wilson after Endgame. Imagine the shield being Sam's character throughout the MCU, and the chair being a representation of the shitty writing this series has, then this is the perfect analogy of this version of Sam. So, which version of Sam did we get in his theatrical debut as Captain America? It's a Phase 5 film. What version did you think we were going to get? He is simultaneously a quick-thinking, fast-acting soldier capable of outmaneuvering a Hulk, and then he'll struggle to take on one dude in a fistfight. They constantly go on about how he doesn't have the super soldier serum and has to rely on his tech and skills, and then Red Hulk will swing a flagpole like a baseball bat and he'll catch it with his bare hands without his arms instantly shattering, showing not only his stupidity but the amount of plot armor he needs in order to win. Speaking of the super soldier serum, his personality is just all over the place as it was in the show. On the one hand, he's extremely empathetic and tries to talk the villains down, being able to understand their grief and trauma, and then at one point he goes up to Bucky and tells him that he should have taken the serum, like Steve and Bucky did. Sam, have you developed brain damage? You know fine well that Bucky didn't want any of this shit to happen to him, yet you talk to him like he chose to experiment on himself and become the Winter Soldier. It's such a bizarre scene that I can't understand how no one caught this when it was being filmed. Ever since he's been deprogrammed, one of Bucky's main character traits is his trauma over what happened to him, and yet Sam acts like he wanted to become this super soldier badass. He also never bothers to get in contact with Banner to try and get his opinions on things. I get it, Banner is mostly just trying to relax and meditate on everything he's been through, and it's not like they're best pals, but they're friendly enough and on the same team. So it just comes across as unbelievably stupid that he would never contact the world's expert on gamma radiation when it comes to dealing with these gamma related threats. Not the best way to unveil your new Captain America to the world. Also, one of his main things was the trauma he went through after losing his wingman, but despite having access to all of this new high-tech vibranium gear, he never bothers to share it with his new wingman. Completely fine with the possibility of having another friend who dies because he can't be asked to give him the same tech he has. So yeah, as you can see, Sam Wilson started out as the competently written Falcon, a hyper-competent sidekick with great fighting skills, and most importantly, a desire to protect innocent people and the empathy and understanding to those with emotional trauma. And then, like most characters after Endgame, he's been devolved, even character assassinated, just to either become a social issues mouthpiece, to appeal to the writer's deluded sense of morality, or to drag the audiences from one big set piece to another, just in the hopes that you'll forget about all the crazy, nonsense shit he says, whether it's to protect a psychopathic child terrorist, or telling Bucky he's lucky to have been horrifically experimented on against his will because he got super strength from it. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. I also have a Twitter and occasionally I do live streams. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day and hopefully I will see you in the next video.